Hey, this is Ashley. I have a couple of folks asking similar questions. I wanted to walk you through two things real quick, and hopefully this will help. I have opened both documents, the staffing pattern worksheet and the budget, but this is first looking at the staffing worksheet. And the purpose of this is to help you think through how many staff you need on site for any given portion of your day. So you don't have to follow these classrooms that are here if this is not what you're doing. You do not need to have more classrooms than this, though. Otherwise, your budget's going to get a little bit out of control. The only reason, really, if you do anything different is if you do some mixed age groupings. But otherwise, to keep it simple, I would almost say to go with this template. But with that being said, picture your infant classroom. And this column is showing you, here's where I want to see what is your staff child ratio. So for me, I'm going to say that I want to operate a 1-to-4 ratio. And you don't have to put this, but my max group is going to be 6 children. And I'm putting this here just for my own mental thought so I can remember, right? So if the program is open 7:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m., I need to have somebody here all the time. So let's say I have a lead teacher in this classroom and her regular schedule is 8. I'm putting an X just to show myself this is when this person is on the clock. And right now I'm not thinking about timing. I'm just thinking 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And that's already too much because she's on the schedule for 9 hours. So I know that I want to give her an hour lunch in here. And this is still a really long day in an infant classroom. But you notice if I do this, now I have this window of time at the beginning and the end of the day that I don't have covered. So she, let's say, can't do early mornings, but she has no problem staying later. I'm going to put her here until 6, even though we close at 5:30, because we know that we've got some things that we want to set up for the next day in the classroom. So now I need to adjust because we don't want her on the clock any more than 8 hours a day, because then you have overtime for the full week. So I am now taking her off the clock for these hours, and this is going to be her set schedule, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. But we know there's going to be children that come in during this time. So I need to hire a 7:30 when we open, but probably be here a little before that, right? So let's say 7. And we want to allow them time where each one can get a lunch and relieve each other. So she's now here 8 hours a day. But we know that this is probably the busiest portion of the day. And I will need to have a dedicated person in here between 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So now you can see that I have fully covered this classroom, meaning I know that I have somebody here, and the likelihood of me having 5 before 9 a.m. is pretty slim, but it could happen, right? And we don't want any of that either. So let's make some adjustments here. And I'm going to move her around here in the afternoon. And now I'm still kind of looking at this going, what is the best way to make this happen? So we know we want 2 folks in here at all times because we can't leave one person with more than their ratio in an infant classroom. You'll notice that I've kind of come up with this issue that I'm going to need to figure out how do I fix this. But the purpose of this sheet is so that at the end, when you work through this and have all your totals down here, the total number of staff that you need in the program has to be on your payroll in the budget too. I'm going to flip over and open the budget, and this is what you see when you first open the Excel spreadsheet. Notice across the bottom as I hover over, you'll see there's 4 tabs that need to be filled out. The first one that comes up is going to be income. So remember in my staffing worksheet, I said that I'm going to have a maximum group size of 6. And I'm making this up just to plug in a number for you right now. I'm going to charge $225 a week for tuition. And this is a yearly budget, remember, and the number of weeks will go here. But notice there's some asterisks. We want to know what that means. So down here for the second asterisk, the goal is not to be in the red. You want to pay staff what they're worth, but you also want to remember you're not going to be full 100% of the time. Perhaps you use 48 weeks a year, assuming there'll be some unused portion of the year. So rather than putting in 52 weeks that I'm earning this, I'm going to put 48. And I'll address that in just a second. But the reason we want to do this is you don't ever want to create a budget for being fully enrolled every day, 52 weeks out of the year, because that's not how life will work. It's better to underestimate income than to overestimate income. Now, some of you have said, all I'm getting is this weird pound sign. This, when I click on it, you'll notice up here, there's a formula already put here for you. Don't delete that. It's going to give you the math for you. What's happening is your row is not wide enough to show you all the numbers. See? I'm going to do that one more time. Let me make it small enough. Okay. The issue is that this column is not as wide as you want it to be to see that number. When I take my mouse and I click or I hover right here, hold it down and drag, I'm now making the column wide enough that it's putting that number where I can see it. So you're going to want to go through and do that for each of your age groups. And I'm making up a number just so you can see this happening in real time. And now notice what happened. It's populated that amount of tuition over here for me. And it's also putting the total tuition over here for me. So you don't have to do this math. The math will happen for you. Now, as you go down, another thing to keep in mind, let's say you want to offer a tuition discount. You can write over here all day long. I'm just showing you what happens. But if I type in these white boxes, it doesn't do any of the math for me. The gray boxes are where your math gets populated in. Okay, now notice down here, it's doing the math for me. Make sure you type the numbers you want to include in the gray boxes. This pound sign has happened again here, so I'm going to go up because it's in column B. I'm going to click here to hold it and drag it over just a bit so that I can see the numbers to keep my brain in check. You'll fill in everything that's gray that you want to fill in. You don't have to fill in things if it doesn't apply to you. And once you finish this sheet, you go over to expenses. I'm going to scroll all the way up. This is where a lot of people get confused. You're really copying the information you already have into this table. So your max ratios, but this is where your numbers from the staffing sheet need to match up with the number of staff that are on your payroll. And as you start working on pay for staff, remember the webinar that you just watched about the salary scale toolkit and thinking about pay, living wage as a minimum is always our goal. This is where you'll start to plug all of that in. So your number of staff here is going to want to match what's here, which is also going to want to match what's on your staffing sheet. But let's say, just for example, I have 10 lead teachers in my program. And I know that I want to pay them, well, let's backtrack. In my head, I want them to have at minimally an associate's degree. And I could always go back and look at the model salary scale to see what that recommends. I know in Guilford County that a living wage is going to be around $20 an hour, and I cannot do that myself, but I'm going to try to come really close. So let's say, just for the heck of it, I'm still going to start at $20 an hour. to see how this works out with my budget. And notice it's 52 weeks because we want to make sure that they get vacation time. And over here, I'm getting the pound sign again. So I'm going to stretch this column out so I can see it. Now, I'm not going to, whoops, look at that. I have an error. I just noticed too, when I saw $41,000 for 10 staff for a year, that there's no way that that's accurate. And it's because I had them working 4 hours per week. I'm going to put 40. And now you see the change to the budget, right? As you go down, most of the things are going to tell you what it's looking for. So if a Medicare tax that you pay as an employer is 1.45% of total wages, whatever ends up being in this total wages box, excuse me, I clicked so you could see the formula. You multiply times by 1.45% or multiply times 0.0145. And then you'll put that total here. This table is going to calculate the payroll taxes that you have to pay as an employer. As you go down, you'll have the option of providing benefits, and you don't want to just make up a number. Some of this is in the module. And some of this is given as a suggestion. Hey, if I want to do this, use this number. Let's put this here just to see what happens. And then remember, for mortgage, taxes, materials, vehicle leases, all the things down here, stay in the gray box. As long as your numbers are in the gray boxes, I'll scroll to the bottom. You'll see that's the only number I've entered, but it already brought it here for me. That was the one number from my payroll. Your totals page is going to take both of the numbers from income and expenses and go ahead and give that to you to say, hey, you are on the profit side or you are on the negative side. And for your reflection tab, be sure to type into these two boxes. Tell me about the decisions that you had to make, because I think you're quickly going to find there's definitely a relationship here between choices, quality, what you want to do, what you have to pay. And you're going to see too that this is not a business model that's profitable or will really actually pay staff what they deserve. So just think about how all of that worked out for you and give a short response of what your thought process was and what this really means in the grand scheme of things. So if you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. I have set up 2 open Zoom calls. I'll have the link shared in an email, but I wanted to make sure you saw me kind of open this and talk through some of it, so that might help with some of the questions I've had. Feel free to reach out, text, my cell number is posted all over the place, but 336-580-0648. If you have any questions at all, please text me, call, leave a message, and I'll be back to you as soon as possible. Y'all got this.